Take it. Hey, my name is David Olds, and I'm your co-host for Mississippi Happenings. Joining me each week is my friend Jim Newman. Jim, what you got for us today?
Oh, we've got a great program today. Talking with the Mississippi ACLU Executive Director, Jarvis Dortch, about, I don't know, the First, Second, 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments, civil rights, just an awful lot. It's a full program.
Sounds good. Each week we do discuss the kitchen table issues about what's going on in Mississippi. And there's so much going on in Mississippi, and there's also so much going on in Washington. And it's about our rights, our civil rights. And each week we talk about public education, we talk about healthcare, we talk about voting rights. We talk about what's going on in Jackson with the lawmakers. We talk about, state income tax issues that are coming up. And today we have a guest who has firsthand knowledge and experience about all of these. Our guest today, as Jim said, is Jarvis Dortch, and he is the Executive Director of the American Civil Liberties Union of Mississippi. He's received his bachelor's degree in political science from Jackson State and got his law degree from the Mississippi School of Law, and he's a member of the Mississippi State Board. He was also elected to the House of Representatives in 2015, and he was reelected in 2019. He covered District 66, House District 66, which is South Jackson, Byram, Terry, Raymond, and Utica. And he stepped down from the legislature to become the executive director. So, Jarvis, it is great to have you. It's great to have you with us. And I know we got a lot to talk about what's going on. And it seems like our rights are being taken away from us every day. So, Jim, I'll turn it over to you. Or, excuse me, Jarvis. You're welcome to say something before I turn it over to Jim.
Just thank you all for inviting me over, and I'm happy to be a part of this and to talk about what's going on here in Mississippi and what's going on nationally.
Thank you. Jim?
Great. Jarvis, when I look up the ACLU Mississippi, a couple of things struck me as right off the bat. Seems that you've really taken a liking to the city of Lexington. I don't know. Are you going to open a branch office there?
When I guess this was happening my first year here, and we started getting a lot of complaints that were about Lexington, and I grew up just south of Lexington in Yazoo County, so I knew the area, and we had people that were putting together town halls, events up there, and one thing that we got the impression from local folks was you guys are just showing up, and as soon as we're done with this, y'all will be gone. You're not going to do anything. I was intent on not doing that, and us trying to figure out a way to be able to bring in the capacity to bring some lawsuits. And we started reaching out to national law firms. I think every one of the cases that we have in Lexington is backed by a firm from out of state who is backing some of the expenses of it and putting some of the lawyers pro bono on it. And really for us, it was stunning that we tried to work with the city and it was like, hey, you guys need to change some of these policies. You need to make sure people that are getting arrested, when they're paying bail, that money's actually being tracked. There are no policies for that. There were so many things they could have easily done, and at every point they said no. And we were able to do some investigating and turn over some information to the federal government, to the U.S. Attorney's Office. We sent it to every state agency as well, and no, none of the state agencies wanted to do anything about it. So so we brought multiple lawsuits. The changes with the Trump administration, we're not sure where the U.S. Attorney's investigation is at right now. They had completed the investigation and were working with the city, coming together with some agreements. But last time we talked with the office, they had basically were under a pause, and any of these corrective agreements, they don't know what's going to happen with them or if they're going to be able to go forward.
Yes, because let's see, where is what's the status with, I think it's Deborah Powell and Javarius Russell?
Yeah.
Those are the two?
Yeah, those are still, two of them are in discovery, and the other two we are, I think we're battling motions to dismiss, which is typical. We've gotten past that on the other two. So, these lawsuits take a lot of time. We really were hoping that we were going to see some systematic change come from the federal government through their investigation, and also, provide some benefit and assistance to these individual plaintiffs. But the big structural change will come through that settlement process. And, we'll push for that in our litigation, but the federal government the Justice Department has a lot of power to come down and be able to correct some of this behavior. When we called the U.S. Attorney's Office, it was kind of scary for them to tell us that y'all know what we know. It said, whatever you read online is what we know. There hasn't been much of an update since, and this includes the investigation in the Rankin County Sheriff Department. So we don't know where any of that is standing right now.
Yeah.
One of the lawsuits that you mentioned, was that regarding, you said Mrs. Powell, Debbie Powell, did I get the name right?
Yes. Deborah
Tell
Powell,
us a little bit, what is that lawsuit about, if you would, tell us about that.
I'm not sure about the exact details on that one. I think that was the one where most of them have to deal with police detaining folks for any type of reason, just to detain people, and what they were
like
basically
a speeding
doing.
ticket.
Yeah, and they were pulling people over and putting them in a position where they were forced to go to jail and then have to pay some type of fine or bail to get out, and there was no records of where that money was going to. No court records, municipal court, the city court there was not keeping records on who was receiving funds. There's also the abuse angle. There is a lot of, this is a small police, you were talking about a police agency of about 3 people.
Yeah.
They were basically operating from a point of view that these are poor Black folks in Holmes County. We can do whatever we want to them. And, it started right after COVID, and from what the mayor has said, was in response to a rise in crime in the area. So they started setting up roadblocks, started just enforcing, pulling people over, or people that were just on the street, just, locking them up or just harassing folks. So it's been very systematic, and some of it has been just blatantly racist, with some of the police officers even being recorded saying that they can kill people and get away with it. It's been, some of it's just insane, but it all goes back to this police department operating as if the people that live in that community have no rights, that they
Gotcha.
don't have the ability to contest any of this.
My fear is that this is not necessarily true in all 82 counties, but I think it's probably true in a majority of the counties. police departments or sheriffs have a pretty strong hand in ruling what goes on and who goes to jail, who's in their jails, and how long they're in their jails, and whether they can get a hearing and get bonded out or whether they can't. Friend of mine,
the Department of Justice told us that when they do these investigations, they're usually in larger cities. Like they've got one in Memphis that they closed, one outside of St. Louis. That this was the first one they've done in a town the size of Lexington. Like they don't usually go to places like that, but they did want to make a point of showing that they were committed to protecting rights in rural areas, no matter how small, instead of just focusing on big cities.
Yeah. One of the things that interested me was the suit that y'all brought, Net Choice versus Fit. That's interesting. What's the status of that? It's about censorship and the internet.
Yeah, I think we only signed on as amicus on that one, but that came out of a law that was passed 2 or 3 years ago by the legislature to mandate that some internet companies put in place a system where they verify age, and it's a burdensome system that is, some of these internet providers have just made it clear that it's too costly to put this in place for them just to operate in Mississippi, and that it's gathering data and information from individuals that shouldn't have to provide that information, and that there are other safeguards in place for people to prevent people from seeing something like child porn. And this just goes, the law is pretty just so broad that it was intrusive on those internet companies and local libraries. And right now, it's still working its way through the court system in the Fifth Circuit.
Yeah. And the big one, I guess, is one I think that the NAACP as well as the ACLU brought on the redistricting in 2020.
Yeah, so that one, last week we filed a brief opposing the remedial plan that the state legislature came up with. The state was ordered to draw 3 new majority Black districts, 2 in the Senate, 1 in the House. The maps that they presented, especially the one focused on DeSoto County, that area, we fully reject that map. We think that map could actually reduce the number of districts where Black voters could select someone of their choice instead of adding an additional district. It's drawn in a way to really offset any gains that the court ordered. And on the House side, they did something similar in Chickasaw, Monroe County, and we're objecting to that. So the state has a few more days to reply to our objection, and then we'll be before the court arguing that the court should adopt some other options. But the hope is you'll have a special elections this November.
I live in DeSoto County, so I'm aware of that redistricting, and already the Board of Supervisors, they've opposed that as well, and I think they've filed a lawsuit against that. Against that redistricting.
They agree with our brief, so.
They agree with it, but for different reasons. But that's okay.
Different reasons. Yeah.
Different reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's clear what they were doing in the Senate. They created a district that paired up to a Black senator and a white senator, and it's a small majority of the population is in the Delta, and about 48% of the population is in Hernando, which is a wealthy suburb. The votes there are going to be higher than those districts in the Delta. So even though that district is 51.2% Black, it's going to be very difficult for a Black candidate to win because of the difference in turnout in Quitman County as opposed to Hernando.
Yeah, and Hernando is very red. It is Trump supporters all the way. So,
yeah, and the Hernando folks, especially Senator McClendon in the state Senate, did not want to be lumped in with these folks from the Delta, as they made perfectly clear they did not think that the citizens of Hernando should be included in a state Senate district that includes Clarksdale and Quitman County and parts of Tunica.
gotcha.
David?
Jim?
Yeah. What was the original on this redistricting plan? What was the intent? Was it to create another, or I think you said 3 more minority majority districts?
Yeah, you're asking what the court ordered?
Yes, sir.
From the lawsuit? Yeah. The court ordered for the legislature to enact 2 additional districts where Black voters can select a candidate of their choice in the state Senate. One in and around DeSoto County, the second around Hattiesburg. And on the House side, they ordered the legislature to adopt one in and around Chickasaw, Monroe County. So 3 in total. In doing that, they want to make sure that these are additional seats, that there's no harm done to existing representation as far as with Black voters being able to elect people of their choice. So they give the legislature the first option to create these maps, and courts usually defer to these legislatures to be able to draw this because they don't like getting in the business of drawing maps. But we feel like we have a very strong objection in DeSoto County, especially because the 2 districts that are created that are supposed to be districts where Black voters are able to choose a candidate, both of those districts look like they're losers for Black voters. So it would actually take there's one district in that area right now where Black voters have the opportunity to elect their candidate. We think with this map that may take it down to 0.
Goodness.
Gotcha. I know that looking through the website and everything, one of the things that you talk about is, of course, protecting citizens' right to vote, which would be online voter registration, no excuse early voting, and then, yes, protection for registered voters. You want to talk about that for a minute? Tell us your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Surprisingly, last year we saw an early voting bill come out of the state Senate. It wasn't a great bill, but it did provide for like 10 days of early voting prior to Election Day. There were some issues with it, but when it came over to the House, we actually met with the chairman of the Elections Committee who was going to take up the bill. I guess I can say he's very much in favor of doing the early voting, but at the time he had a lot of pushback from local circuit clerks who were concerned about, the work that would be put on them by having early voting. So this session, he came back and was thinking that, we're going to do the same thing, but that they had addressed a lot of the concerns of those circuit clerks, but and he's publicly said this, that he could not get the support in the Republican House caucus to bring the bill out, which means they're the votes. They have the votes over in the House to pass it, but we essentially have a rule in the House where if it takes a certain number of Republican caucus members support something controversial before it can go out, even if, you could get the votes by a combination of Democrats and Republicans. Their rule is that the actual debate happens in the House caucus meeting, Republican caucus meeting.
Well, which brings up something that David and I had discussed. When you've got a supermajority, and whether it's the Senate or the House, the Republicans have a meeting on whatever committee it is. That meeting is not, notification of that meeting is not always sent out to the public. And if by chance they find out about it, the public are not allowed to be in there or make any comments regarding what's up for discussion that day in that committee. And it's like you don't have any input into what's going on. And that also leads back to another question later on about the right to have an initiative petition. But how does this work that the House and the Senate, I think the court ruling was that the Republicans having a meeting did not have to be open to the public. And yet they discussed legislation in that meeting. How is that justified by the court? I'm not familiar with it. It doesn't seem right.
The court is essentially saying that this isn't an official meeting of the legislature. It's basically them looking at what's happening and kind of closing your eyes to see that, we all know it's come out from a number of legislators throughout the last 5-6 years that those meetings are where the House debates bills. If you watch the legislature and the House debate bills, you'll see that questions are only coming from Democrats. It's not that Republicans don't have questions, it's that they've asked their questions behind closed doors and they've gotten the answers there. And they essentially have a rule too that, we don't do arguments on the House floor in public. So it's the courts, closing their eyes to reality and looking at something as a technical, this is just a meeting of a caucus of lawmakers, and that's not, no official action is taking place there.
Well, every county's got its 5 supervisors, and 3 of them cannot get together.
Yeah.
Why doesn't that apply to the legislature?
I think it should. I mean, with the supermajority where they are essentially making decisions on, what's going to go forward with the amount of members that they have in their caucus, it would seem that would apply. We've heard on the Senate side that the lieutenant governor even thinks that he doesn't have these type of meetings because he believes that that's a violation of the open meetings law because they have a supermajority on the Senate side as well. But the courts also give the state legislature a lot of leeway in what they do, and they are reluctant to tell them how to operate within the legislature, within their rules. There was a lawsuit brought a few years ago by a House member that challenged the way bills were read when the state constitution clearly says that every legislator has the right to have a bill read, and the House uses a machine that goes, I guess, like 20 times the speed of a regular person talking to get through the bill as quickly as possible. And he brought a lawsuit that got thrown out because the court said the legislature, we're not going to tell the legislature how to operate their rules. So even though it's clearly the Constitution says a bill has to be read, you would think it has to be read in a way that someone can comprehend what is said, because you cannot understand what is being recited through that machine.
So, to the point, if the people, we the people, in order to form a more perfect union, if some of those we the people decide that we want to challenge this, do we contact you? Is it worth even challenging?
I think with the courts that we have right now, the best way to change it would be forcing lawmakers to change their rules when they come in for a new term. Those rules that are adopted by the House and Senate don't require much debate, and they don't require hearings. They don't require, public opportunities for the public to provide remarks on legislation. And this is something that's done in legislatures across the country, even Republican supermajority legislatures. There's opportunity for the public to comment on bills before they're passed. We don't do that in Mississippi. Outside of the courts, that's probably the best way to attack it. Because otherwise, the courts have pretty much made it clear, the state courts, that this isn't, these meetings aren't, they view these meetings as not official meetings of the legislature.
It seems like, excuse me, President Trump has started his immigration deportation, and a federal judge said, you need to stop. And Trump's response has been, he needs to be impeached. Isn't that the first step? It's not the first step, because I think we've already passed the first step in losing our democracy. But how far down are we going with this losing our civil rights before organization, well, not necessarily organization like yours, but before the people take to the streets and we see riots?
For me, it's been disappointing to see the reaction from, Democratic or progressive politicians, that they have come with this attitude that, we're not going to swing at every ball that comes their way. I don't think you can choose whose rights can be denied and then come in and jump in and say, well, we're going to protect these folks when he does that. Once he gets in the practice of denying folks' rights, it just goes to the next group. It's not going to be walled off at just trans people. They are literally taking Venezuelan migrants that, many of them, it looks like they have no criminal record. They are not deporting them. They are taking them to a prison work camp in a country they've never been in, and basically forced into prison slavery with no due process at all. And the federal government is saying, Trump is saying, that national security reasons allow him to be able to do whatever he wants.
If we can,
and it's nobody can tell me.
It's absolutely crazy. And one of the things that I want to commend your website is,
could you text
you
it
have
to
a
me?
section for immigrants, and you have a section that gives immigrants, their rights. It tells them what they have a right to do and a right not to do, which I think is extremely important. And one of the things that was so upsetting to me, number one, it's just so upsetting, and because it came out of DeSoto County, the bounty law. What the heck? I mean, what kind of a nation have we become that we're going to give you $1,000 if you find an illegal alien? And that was part of, Matthew Barton, who's the DA in DeSoto County where I live, and Representative, I think his name was King. That's just horrible. Luckily, the bill died, but still, just think of the fear that put into people, and people were gung ho. Yeah, I'm going to get $1,000. I'm going to turn in somebody. And it's just atrocious.
Well, he got the idea from the state of Texas and the abortion laws that they passed out there. And there was a bounty on reporting pregnant women who had abortions, and you got $10,000. And the next thing you know, it turns up as a bounty for immigrants in Mississippi.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't understand how somebody that's in law enforcement, someone that's been elected to public office, could read through that bill and still feel comfortable putting their name on it. It's almost as if they don't think they're talking about real people. That the only way that could, make sense to them is if they do not see these folks as human. And it just goes back to, fugitive slave laws, where, of course, the people that promoted those see people in slavery as human beings. So it's disheartening, but we've got a tough time ahead of us. And, it's hopefully people will start understanding these stories about who these folks are and what they're doing in our country, and that we'll, wise up and, not just take it, but, ask for better. It's hard to do the work when you feel like people went through this, and then, folks come out and say, well, we want it again. And we want it even worse than the first time around. So and
next year it could pass, and there could be a bounty law. And you talk about different people, and one of the things I want to bring up is the elimination of DEI, diversity, equality, inclusion. Now, what people...
Congratulations.
I got it right. And what a lot of people don't realize, and we had a great conversation with Greta Kemp Martin, that this DEI, it also affects our veterans. It affects those with disabilities, school children with learning disabilities. And to me, and I'm going to get on my soapbox for just a minute, DEI, diversity, equality, inclusion. What is the opposite of that? And the opposite of that is, in my opinion, segregation. And are we, and this is a question that, are we going back to the days of Jim Crow in Mississippi? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, when I think about it, as far as like the policy of DEI itself, the inclusion part stands out to me because, as you mentioned, it's just not focused on Black folks. It's focused on anybody that is going to, say, a university where they feel like they are isolated as far as, their lived experience. That could be their race, their sex. It could be, disability, being a veteran. It provides them an opportunity to kind of acclimate to that university or any type of setting to make them feel part of that community. That used to be a good thing. Somehow it changed into a bad thing. And when you get down to looking at how some of these laws are being implemented, and even some of the language, when folks say DEI, it's almost as if they just want to say Black, because it's not, you're not even talking about a HR program. You're calling somebody a DEI hire just because they're a Black man or a Black woman,
or because of their sexual orientation or their gender.
I mean, it's really getting to the point where it's civil rights are supposed to be colorblind, but we don't live in a colorblind society. And the folks that are making these rules are largely white men that are trying to erase, history. There's something over the weekend about Department of Defense has been deleting web pages that just talk about different heroes throughout our existence as a nation that happen to be, Black, Japanese, Korean women. We've got word that a page discussing Medgar Evers' military history has been deleted.
I read about that, I think, this morning. That's just absurd.
Well,
There was go ahead, Jim.
Well, the diversity part, the middle part of it, education. I'm older than both of you two.
Combined.
So I remember very clearly schools being segregated and then the integration. And part of the reason for the integration was the admission that diversity, exposure to other races, other creeds, just everything in general, expands a child's education and makes for a better society. People who travel a lot, people who go to other countries, come back with a different perspective about various things, because travel is an educational process. Whether you like it or not, you are exposed to diversity and equity and inclusion all around the world. I don't understand how we can deny DEI when, at least in my mind, that was the initial strongest point for integration of our schools, was the exposure of the children, of all children, to have a better education and become more homogeneous, if you will, and develop a better country than we've got now.
There's a great, last week read an article. It's in Mississippi Today. It's an editorial written by Byron Dondre O'Ree, who is a professor of political science at Jackson State, and this is his editorial. And I do want to quote this because it's so important and so pertinent to what we're talking about right now. And Jim, we need to talk to this guy. He says, and this is about DEI, eliminating DEI would preserve the luxury of ignorance, enabling those in power to remain comfortably aware while marginalized communities suffer the consequences. The luxury of whites, then, is being ignorant comfortably. DEI is not just about education. It's about justice, equity, and ensuring the future generations inherit a society where inclusion is non-negotiable. So I just wanted to, that just hit me, and I think it speaks to what we're talking about.
Well, we just completed February, and that was Black History Month, but not in Mississippi.
Man,
go ahead.
Just when you look back at like Brown versus Board, the legal basis of that case was that because these schools were segregated, that diversity, the absence of diversity, was in itself something that made these schools inferior, because Black folks did not have an opportunity to go to school with their white counterparts, and that led to so many different things in society where you had Black students feeling negative about themselves because that's what they had been taught by popular culture. And I just imagine white students who had never met Black folks in their lives outside of, maybe a service job or service industry, like you said, they're just going to be ignorant about how people are living and what they're going through. And, having served in the Mississippi legislature, there are a lot of folks up there that really want to be ignorant about the experiences of people outside of their district or outside of the community that they care about the most. They hate it when you start talking about those things, and when you bring up those subjects, they almost feel like you're blaming them for it. But all of this stuff that we're doing in the legislature, it goes back to these communities that have been underserved and underrepresented. And if you're talking about taxes and changing the tax system from income tax based to just sales tax based, you're putting the pressure on a lot of low income Black folks to pay for government, and relieving a lot of people that are wealthy and pay higher income taxes. So all of this stuff goes together.
Yeah. And Haley Barbour.
Go ahead. Good.
Haley Barbour, when he was in office, those 2 terms, the legislation brought him 2 bills about the grocery tax to lower the grocery tax. He vetoed those bills. He would not support them. And just the other day, and this just infuriates me. And this is one of the last things he talks about. Yes, he supports the grocery tax. He supports it all the way, and he talks about also, there's no doubt in my mind that it would help our economy if there wasn't an individual income tax. And then he goes on to say, and he says, now having said that, you have to figure out how to pay for it. And I've always been struck, even while I was governor, at the people who wanted to do away with tax on groceries. He continued, well, for tens of thousands of people in Mississippi, that's the only tax they pay. And I call BS on that, and that's, he might as well say poor people, or he might as well say Black people. And does he not realize, everybody, you pay taxes on the cars that you buy. You pay taxes on the clothes that you wear. And so this is just an asinine, I'm sorry, I'm getting on my soapbox again, but that's just crazy. And Mississippi is the poorest state in the union, and we have the highest grocery tax. It's just so, and now they're talking about, okay, they may lower the income tax, state income tax, and they may lower the grocery tax a couple points, but then they're going to raise it in gasoline tax. It's nothing. I mean, what are they doing for the poor? Okay, I'm off my soapbox.
I mean, they're shifting the burden of government to low-income people. They also raise, with the bill that passed out of the House today, they raised the sales tax from 7% to 8.5%. I still don't understand. A lot of that money is supposed to go back to the cities as a diversion. It looks like that money is now going to the general fund for the legislature to make up for the income tax loss. Nobody's explained what these cities and counties are supposed to do when they lose millions of dollars. And the sense you get, especially from the folks on the House side, is they don't care. That, what they want to do is shrink government at the state level and, reduce the burden, the income tax burden on high income people. And, if they do that and some counties and cities are struggling, it's not going to be their counties or cities. I guess that's what they're thinking. And I remember that argument from Haley Barbour. One of my first policy jobs was with the Mississippi Health Advocacy Program. And one thing that we were doing was pushing for that tax swap to increase the cigarette tax to make up for a cut in the grocery tax. So I used to hear that argument, and it was so upsetting because of not just because of what you said about people are paying additional taxes, it not being true. It was almost like, these folks are getting by and we're punishing them and they need to be punished for it. And they're somehow, if you don't do this, they're just going to get by on the system. And, of course it didn't pass, but that was a very big learning experience for me, my first time up at the Capitol working there.
Did I understand you correctly that the Senate passed a bill raising the grocery tax to 8.5%?
No, the House passed a new version of their bill that cut the grocery tax to 5%.
Right.
But it raises the sales tax on everything else to 8.5%.
And
it eliminates the income tax.
Over a period of time, I think, something like that.
County tax assessors are going to have a heyday, aren't they? They're going to be hated because they're going to have to go out and appraise property, and you're not going to pay the same thing you paid this year because it's going to go up 1.5%.
They're going to have to make up for this loss, and the House, at least on the House side, they just don't care. They've not shown any interest in making sure that cities and counties are made whole. And you don't hear much from the municipal league on this, and that's one of the issues in Mississippi, that you get trade groups and organizations that are supposed to be fighting for the betterment of whatever group they're representing, but somehow they get pushed into politics and they don't use their voice. Like last year, the State Hospital Association did not come out for Medicaid expansion while other groups were pushing for it. Because of the change in leadership. And you see that with the municipal league right now, the State Medical Association. These groups are heavily conservative, and they are swayed by, the conservatives that are in leadership at the legislature. And they're not always backing or pushing what you think they would be backing and pushing.
One of the things that we seem to have lost, thanks to, I guess it was the mayor in Madison, I think.
Yeah.
When they, I think it was the marijuana bill, and they got all the signatures and wanted to have a vote, and then it ended up the Supreme Court said, because we've got 5 congressional districts, not 4, according to the state constitution, the initiative petition was invalid. What is it? What does it take for an organization or a group of people to get together and come to you to file a lawsuit to force the legislature to amend the Constitution to the point where there are 4 congressional districts and the initiative petition is the right of the citizens?
What it would probably take, because this is something we looked at, and I looked at a lot back in, after that ruling, was what type of federal lawsuit could we bring to show that the state was depriving people of a right that they had in our state constitution. And there were some similar things that were taken up in, I think, Florida and a couple other states. We ran it by a lot of different attorneys. They did not have buy-in on it. They did not believe that it was a valid argument. So, and especially at that time, you still had a coalition of groups that were working on a ballot initiative for Medicaid expansion, and they were essentially leading the opposition to what the Supreme Court had did, because they had, geared up for a $5 million campaign to expand Medicaid through ballot initiative, and a lot of the decisions as far as how to take on getting the ballot initiative back through the legislature were made through that. through that group. And I think they had a lot of hope that they could get something passed, that the public's reaction would be strong enough where the legislature would do something. They did do something on medical marijuana, but as far as the ballot initiative itself, the lieutenant governor has made it. If people listen to what he says, he's made it very clear he's not going to allow a ballot initiative to become law. He said the ballot initiative is when you vote for your representative or your senator every 4 years. So he doesn't believe in it as a concept. So, I mean, just to answer your question, it's going to take some more research in finding a legal angle that we think we could get into court and not be immediately thrown out. And that has not been agreed upon by a lot of the attorneys that have looked at it.
Well, George Cochran, who taught constitutional law at Ole Miss for a number of years, and I think he, pretty sure he clerked for Supreme Court Justice Black. George used to say, and he's many times, change happens when people take to the streets. And over history, whether it was Martin Luther King, whether it was Adam Clayton Powell, no matter who it was, when people took to the streets, change happened. And I don't think that we in Mississippi have let me rephrase it. We are locked out of advancing any initiative that we may have that the supermajority doesn't want to take up. And that is a infringement upon my right to free speech.
And I agree with you about, one of the first conversations I had with our legal team when I started here was that I'm not going to judge you based on the lawsuits that we win, because I know the situation we're in the Fifth Circuit and with our state courts. So bringing in litigation isn't always about, you have a slam dunk case. Sometimes you need to make the argument to the public so the public understands what's going on. It's a way to galvanize change, as you mentioned, just sitting back and accepting something because it's not a good legal argument, or there's a supermajority in the Mississippi legislature. You're not doing your job. I mean, we're here to do this work. It may be something we look back at. I know at the time there were so many groups involved in it that none of that ever got off the ground. But I'm thinking about it constantly because I do not see, at least with the current makeup of the Mississippi legislature, I don't see it happening as far as them giving that power back to the citizens.
And one of the things that I'm baffled by, we talk about expanded Medicaid. What a lot of people don't understand is that's money that we would get, and that's money that would help poor people, and it's money that would help poor white people, and I have a trouble trying to understand why a poor, underemployed, unemployed white person would support a Republican representative knowing that he doesn't support expanded Medicaid. So it's kind of going, he's voting against his best interest. Medicaid is not just for Black people, and it is, it's to help. It will help white people as well. It will help white children as well. So, but anyway, I just been on a tangent today. I don't know why.
You have been. You really have been.
Jarvis, Is there anything else that you want to talk about that we haven't discussed yet?
I mean, the only other thing is really been something we've been gearing up since the election, being in a situation where we can respond to any mass raids on immigration enforcement. We haven't seen that in Mississippi yet, but we know it's going to come because they seem to be expanding. ICE and the Trump administration seem to be expanding their ways of trying to deport as many people as possible. We have been working with a number of groups that came together in 2019 in response to the raids that happened at the poultry plants back then, trying to reconstitute that group, but also looking at storytelling with a couple freelance journalists that are going to go into community and talk about the experiences of migrant workers or children, what they're going through, and also build out a network of pro bono attorneys that can provide at least that frontline assistance of helping someone that's being detained, being able to find out where they're going to, what the process is. The scary thing right now is based on what they're doing under this executive order, they're saying there's no process. And, there's no way of checking to see if the person that they're sending to a prison in a country they're not even from has any criminal charges. And we're getting stories after story that these folks are not criminals. They're not part of a gang, that they have been picked up and put into a system where they're being shipped out of the country. The federal government is saying, we can't tell you how we know they're gang members. It's
they just know. It's a miracle that they know, and they can't share it. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's a national security issue. Because under this executive order is supposed to apply, this law is supposed to apply to governments. And they're claiming that this gang in itself is a government and that they can just act because of national security concerns. And this is the kind of law that was used to intern Japanese Americans back in World War II. So, yeah, we're in a very dark place.
I would encourage our subscribers to go to your website, which is ACLU-MS.org. I would encourage them to go to that and look at what's going on. Look at the things that you guys are doing for Mississippi. Jarvis, some of these things that we see in this country, it's absolutely crazy. When did we become a country of haters?
I had this just weird belief, like during COVID, when COVID first started, that people were gonna, look at government and say we have to be serious about the people we elect because this is life and death. And I was completely wrong about the response to it. It was, a lot of folks that were upset that they were being told what to do, even if that was limited to just wearing a mask. It was, and there were a lot of people that can play off that, like, folks that are influencers on the internet, the president of the United States. They do a good job of tapping into people's anxieties and giving them someone to be mad at.
Yeah.
And I don't think we've had a politician like Trump that is so overt about it. That's his single policy initiative, is to give you somebody to be angry with, and I'm going to take care of them. Anything else, somebody's to blame for everything, and it's not your responsibility. So I'm just I'll put tariffs on folks, I'll deport people, lock folks up. I want you angry and upset, and I'm your go-to for that.
Man, it's absolutely crazy. Is there anything that you would like our subscribers to do? Anything that our subscribers could help you and help the ACLU of Mississippi?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, go to our website, ACLU. You can actually do aclums.org, and it'll take you to it.
Okay.
You can sign up to be a supporter, just receive our emails. We would love for folks to sign up to become members.
Which we are. I am. I think Jim is too, but go ahead.
Yeah, and just stay in touch. We'll be sharing as much as we can through that, and you can also contact us. We're doing Know Your Rights programs where if your group, community group, neighborhood association wants someone to come out and explain what are your rights in certain situations, we can work with them to have that presentation put forward. So we're really encouraging different organizations or community groups to reach out to us and ask us to come out and explain, everything from Know Your Rights when you're pulled over by police or you encounter ICE or immigration enforcement.
If you have any questions or comments, suggestions about our podcast, you could reach Jim and I at mshappenings1@gmail.com. And as Jarvis just said, you can contact them at aclums.org. And it's Jarvis, has been great talking to you. We'll keep in touch, and hopefully in the next couple of months we'll talk again, and maybe some changes for the good have happened. We can hope that. We do appreciate our sponsors, our subscribers, and may we never become indifferent to the suffering of others.